have a partner report running for,
Uh-huh.
large.
Yeah.
Out running on the roads.
Uh,
How much market
yeah, not much.
There was also an estimate by the person who wrote Lazy.
Uh-huh. Let's write that one down, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
It's kind of about, people who, they're autistic because.
Right.
Massive.
Hi, Marianne. Welcome back.
Hi,
Did you have fun?
I did have fun.
Good.
Yeah. So, it was quick. We had just enough nice weather, so that we could get outside every day. And it was good. I can't wait to go back.
Yeah. Where all did you go?
Well, so we went to Cape Breton Island, and we spent half the time on the end of the island that my mother grew up on. So she grew up in a little village called Glace Bay.
Is that on the east or the west end?
Oh, I don't know. But it's the opposite end of where the national park is.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we spent the other time in the national park.
Oh, nice. Did you see moose?
We did not see moose.
No, really?
No, and we didn't even see any signs of moose. And we went, traipsing in the woods every day. And around here, I see signs of moose every time I'm in the woods almost. But we had a lovely trip, and it was very nice to go and see the place that my mother grew up in. I'd never been there before, so
Nice.
that was nice. Yeah. So, let's see. Do we have everybody?
Marianne, I'm just making sure you can hear me.
We can hear you. Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. So we don't have everybody.
You don't have
but it's
everybody.
not quite one. Okay.
Well, I also noticed that the town website, at least for me, is having trouble with logging onto it. So maybe people are having trouble with the Zoom, not knowing where the Zoom is.
Maybe.
I mean, I went through the agenda, on the meeting.
I couldn't get onto it.
Oh, I didn't have any problem.
It's just spinning for me.
I was just on the
didn't
town
have a
website
problem.
and it was fine for me.
I
Okay.
didn't have a problem.
It looks fine from here.
It's my computer then.
Okay. And I will say that Matt and Dominic, they always kind of log in sort of right at the time the meeting starts or a minute or two after. So, and we're waiting for they were going to have Stimson Associates here in
Right at the beginning. Right.
So let's see. So
And did they provide us with any information to review ahead of time?
No.
That's too bad.
No. So, let's see. So Jeff is not here yet.
Gail's not here.
And they both responded to me that they would be here.
Okay. I was just gonna say that Jeff and Stephen and I could approve a couple of sets of minutes. But we'll wait for Jeff to get here. So
I'll send them an email
okay.
just in case they're having trouble also.
Were there two separate links? Because the meeting was posted twice.
Yes.
Both as a library subcommittee and as a full building committee.
Yeah.
I don't even remember
I-
which one I clicked on.
I just checked and the links are the same.
Oh, thank goodness.
Okay.
Okay.
Also,
you
it's
know.
Lauren's birthday today, in case she did not share that.
Happy
Oh.
birthday.
Happy birthday, Laura.
birthday.
Birthday.
My
And you
birthday
can't-
and
and
my
you can't
last,
stay
my
long.
last meeting here. So
Oh,
Andrea's gonna be able to be here only until 2 o'clock. So,
Okay,
but she will be taking over the project. So
okay.
very capably.
Yes, well, she's been involved from the beginning, so, she doesn't have to do any kind of, there was no learning curve or anything that we have to, accommodate. Okay, here they come.
Here they
Um,
go.
Yeah, there's Dale.
Yep.
Yep.
yeah.
And,
We're just waiting for Jeff.
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Hmm.
Let's see, so there's Matt and Porpla and Dominic. And
there's Greg.
there's Greg. My birthday was October 20th, Lauren. So see, all the best people are born in October.
It's my brother's birthday.
Oh,
Birthday
wow.
to you.
Thank you. Yeah. And my mother's birthday was October 12th. But she died 28 years ago. So
Oh,
yeah,
she was young.
she was young. Yeah. Yeah,
All right, shall we start?
sure.
That Jeff is not here, but I'm sure he's going to join us. We don't have any public, do we?
I don't
I don't see any
anyone.
public. So we'll go beyond public comments. Review minutes of the previous meeting.
Well, so Elaine, do you think since Greg is here that we could
Absolutely, get
let them
started,
start and
jump right in.
Okay,
Sure.
and then we can review minutes at the end.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Does
Thanks
that
a lot.
work for
Yeah,
you?
that
Okay.
sounds great. Thanks a lot,
No-
Elaine
no
and
problem,
Marianne.
no
So
problem.
Appreciate
let's
that.
see, so Greg, do you need to share or Dominic?
I will share.
Okay.
I have the slides that Stimson
okay.
will.
All right, let me find you on
Speak
the
to.
list and make you a
Yeah.
co-host. Okay.
And just for everybody else, we have Greg and Lily from Stimson joining us today. So the first thing that they will present is updates to the landscape site plan. So I'll just bring that up now. And I'll let Greg and Lily take the front end of this presentation. And then following that component, I think we'll let Greg and Lily go, and then we can continue with the meeting thereafter.
Mhm.
So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Greg or Lily, just let me know when you want me to go next slide.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Very nice to be with you. Greg Tizzolo. I don't know that I've met all of you just yet, but I'm landscape architect with Stimson. I actually live right down the road in Leverett. I drive by the site every day to get to work. So I'm very glad to be working on this project. I guess what I wanted to highlight, I'll comment on a couple things here about the overall organization of the site. I think one of the most important things that we think we should discuss today, in addition to just kind of a general update to the layout, is the idea of the reading garden and sort of what your intentions are, and kind of matching that up with where we go regarding especially permitting and cost, and so in other words, both informing the design development documents that will be producing shortly, and also the permit drawings that will also be producing and issuing to the town very shortly. So maybe I'll just start by highlighting a couple of high level changes that have happened in the last couple of weeks regarding the design. So the general arrangement of the arrival sequence and the driveway, et cetera, is largely unchanged. Though we've done a couple of things to really address, I guess, a heightened awareness of the sensitivity of the wetlands and their buffers. So the main two wetland systems that have bearing on the project are generally those two, both to the west and the east of the building. And then, there's obviously some back in the rear, but by moving the building forward, I think we're quite a bit away from those. So it's really those first two that I highlighted that you can kind of see create a pinch point that both the building and the driveway need to kind of slide through and pass between. And we also know that there's been a strong motivation for cost purposes, primarily to minimize the overall length of the driveway and allow basically hold the building farther to the north of the site, closer to Leverett Road. So there's a motivation to pull that to the north, yet there's this sort of pinch point between the two wetlands. So what we've really had to do, I'd say, is to kind of minimize the cross section or the kind of elements that pass through that bottleneck, essentially, which include not only the building and the driveway, but also associated disturbance and grading. So we've been working closely with Fuss and O'Neill to understand, grading implications, the sort of finished floor elevation of the building, how that relates to the grades, et cetera. And so one feature that we did change is the overflow parking, which used to be kind of down in this zone, has shifted up a little bit closer to Leverett Road and has switched to the west side of the street, of the driveway rather. And I believe we have the same, generally the same capacity, approximately 4 to 5 cars capacity. This overflow parking feature does coincide with a sort of a shoulder. It's not a hard paved sidewalk. I believe it's a compacted gravel sidewalk that is essentially designed to be just sort of a shoulder to allow pedestrians who may be either walking from the neighborhood on Leverett Road or perhaps dropped off by a school bus or other type of vehicle at the street. It allows them to make their way into the site, allowing them to step off the hard paved driveway as vehicles kind of come and go. So that kind of coincides with the parking. I think generally there's adequate space there, so that shouldn't be a conflict. In addition to shifting that parking, we've also looked at narrowing the space between the building and the parking lot proper, especially this edge right here. And Lily, maybe you can remind me, but I think we went from 25 down to 20 feet.
Yes, that's correct.
So we have 20 feet from that easternmost face of the library building to the, I think it's actually to the curb itself, not to the sidewalk. But that's pretty much as tight as we're comfortable going. And I think the good news is that it should be enough to essentially keep our disturbance, the grading and clearing required for the project, outside of the most minimal buffers that we've identified, which I believe is a 25-foot offset from the actual wetlands proper. It's probably about as the best we're going to be able to do. Even we're working within those the 100-foot buffer, so we're well within the jurisdiction. But we're again trying to be as conservative as possible while still maintaining this general scheme and arrangement of both parking and building. The parking lot itself has been adjusted a little bit. I think the concept remains unchanged, that there's a few different elements, that there's a drop-off area here in the red, followed by 2 accessible parking spaces just after that are sort of 90-degree spaces a more kind of conventional 90-degree space with a drop curb to allow, wheelchairs to accessibly access the sidewalk and then head into the front door. And then a series of angled parking that basically from this point forward, there's essentially a one-way circulation of cars around that loop there, so that that kind of enables the angled parking, so you can carefully pull in, carefully back out, and depart. 11 total sort of angled spaces, and we've worked with Fuss & O'Neill and our own internal team to confirm that we've got the proper turning for allowing a fire truck to make a full loop around that central planted feature, sort of donut hole, if you will, in that parking lot. Let's see. As far as other elements, I think that more or less covers what has changed regarding the vehicle circulation and the sort of arrival. The building and the pavement are tighter together than before, just slightly, but we still are designing and planning for a stormwater feature that slides between the building and the parking lot, that essentially takes runoff from the roof and other areas of the site and moves it towards the north to a basin, that sort of terminal basin where I have the kind of circle drawn, that kind of allows that stormwater to settle and slow down and recharge as much as possible. That's all been designed in coordination with Fuss & O'Neill and works with the requirements that they've laid out for that aspect of the project. The building itself has, as I'm sure you're mostly familiar, has several doors. I believe there's 6, a sort of main door and a rear door, and then but the 2 doors towards the north, the doors haven't really shifted, but the pathways that connect to them have shifted. So if you can see how, as we've slid the building forward, we're have almost slid it tighter into that sort of pinch point between the 2 wetlands. So what the pathway that previously kind of crossed the back, we've eliminated in favor of reducing the footprint of grading on that west side of the building. And as a result, the doorways allow you to circulate around the building towards the north and towards the south, but there is no pathway connecting those 2 doors at this point. And as far as we understand, that doesn't seem to be, at least from our assessment, it doesn't seem to be an issue. The doors towards the north, I'll just clear this for a sec. The doors towards the north, we understand, are not intended to be used for regular circulation in and out of the building, but they really are there primarily for emergency egress. Now that pathway does cross over our swale, our stormwater garden in that area. So there's a little moment there where we'll pass over that sort of low point or swale feature. But again, we're not intending for people to be moving into the building along this pathway. And similarly in the rear, we've also, in the spirit of minimizing the disturbance towards the rear of the building, have taken a pathway, the pathway that was perhaps a little bit farther off, set of it farther off, and really pulled that as tight as we can. I believe we're in the neighborhood of sort of 8 feet off the south side, right in this zone. And one of the reasons for doing that is we identified through a second site visit where the building location was staked. And Dominic, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the building had been staked something more like in this location, about 20 feet further to the south.
That's right. Yeah.
And we had identified that there is and the surveyors, flagged those corners of the building. And what we found, I think, in the field is that right around in this zone here, I'm sure everyone's generally recalls there's kind of a logging road or a sort of a maintenance road that sort of runs in that direction. But just to the south of there's I don't know that I'd call it a feature, but it looks to me like the kind of remnants of a stone wall or a stockpile of stone. The site kind of berms up a little bit. There's some remnants of a barbed wire fence and some other debris and so forth. And it just felt to us in the field that area we'd rather stay out of it. Essentially, we'd rather not touch it due to the disturbance requirements, cost, etc. And that's what sort of motivated the building to be shifted that 20 feet towards the north. And we were able to do that with really minimal changes to the parking lot. We adjusted a little bit how the door kind of interacts with the parking lot, but in my estimation, it worked pretty well to make that change. And so that's really what was motivating retreating shifting the building to the north and pulling this pathway here, as tight to the building as we possibly could. So that's sort of some adjustments there that, as far as I can tell, have really constrained in a good way the limits of the project from a lot of perspectives, including both permitting and cost. The one complication I'd say to this plan, we're showing here this idea of a reading garden off to, in this case, to the west of the building. It's depicted in a certain way, i.e. some clearing and a paved pad and pathway. But I really did want to discuss that. And one of the reasons, or one of the kind of motivators that came up in the last just 2 days or so, it has to do with the location of the well to provide the potable water for the building and the associated requirements for that feature, which I understand to have a 100-foot buffer between the well itself and any impervious surface. As I mentioned before, there's this sort of logging road. We're trying to kind of think about location in regards to access for the drill rig, and the logging road, in my estimation, is a perfect access road to allow that rig to get sort of deeper into the site without requiring any more disturbance. The other complicating factor, and Dominic, I'm just going to kind of sketch this. I don't think we have an exhibit to this effect, but if I'm good to just go ahead and try to sketch this in, I'll do so. The thinking that we would use the access road to allow the truck to get in there, the well itself not only has a buffer towards the building side, but it also would have essentially a no build buffer in all directions. And due to the property line, we really want to keep that buffer on our property so that we wouldn't have to go to the neighbors and ask them for permission to put an encumbrance on their property. That seemed kind of like a non-starter. So we're essentially keeping the well location 100 feet from the property line in this direction here. And then the other 100 foot towards the east defines another sort of limit of hardscape development towards our building, which essentially limits our ability to develop a reading garden with hardscape of any kind. And so that's, in other words, what I'm getting at is that I think that the the location shown on this plan is probably not going to work. It's probably going to need to be adjusted, and I don't really see a problem with that myself. I just wanted to kind of highlight that reading garden location on this plan is probably needs to be adjusted. And the way that it would be adjusted, at least in my current thinking, is let me just try to get another color in here. That there's essentially there's a line here from the well, and there's a line here from and these are generalities. We can provide a more carefully measured plan, but essentially what I see is an envelope of space off the south side of the building that is both with outside of the 100-foot wetland buffer and also outside of the 100-foot well buffer that would allow this project or you, the library, in the future to develop, further develop a reading garden of some kind without having to, trigger any kind of changes or updates to your wetlands permit. So I think after having kind of learned more about that requirement and talking to Matt from Fuss and O'Neill and others, it felt like this zone that I've kind of highlighted in blue is really what we should be looking at as the most kind of free and clear zone to develop a kind of reading garden, especially given the fact that it may be a feature that we can't necessarily define and or afford at the moment. In other words, it could end up being the most sort of conservative approach to it, I guess, would be to kind of reserve that space almost as a sort of a master plan idea for a future reading garden. And then we can talk a bit more about sort of what shape that might take. Now, having said that, there are a couple considerations for a reading garden that I just want to highlight to folks that I think are important and maybe just worthy of discussion. The biggest one in my mind is that if you're providing a kind of feature area for your outdoor programming, it probably should have a component or a portion of that program space that is accessible. And generally speaking, what that means for me would be materials and grading. Essentially, that grades have to be within a certain range, and the materials of the pathways and seating have to meet certain criteria, as you understand, I'm sure, from looking at aspects of the interior of the building, and satisfying those requirements are probably would be certainly easier for us essentially to build those into the project now and build it into the kind of the main build contract of the project, rather than requiring or deferring that and then requiring you in a different setting to have to design and build something to meet those standards as part of phase 2 or as part of say a volunteer effort or something like that. So I think what we were intending was to recommend that some minimal amount of a reading garden, the accessible portion of a reading garden, we might want to consider building now as part of the main contract package of this project. And then so from an accessibility point of view, that's one thing. And then I guess it's really more in a way more from a cost perspective, that if you're especially now as we're looking at possibly bringing features out into this zone, maybe there are little nodes of seating or little clearings or what have you, that if there is grading, tree clearing, moving of soil and stone required, that again, it might be just more kind of cost effective and advantageous for you to have the landscape contractor or excavating contractor building the building just doing that work for you. It just might be a little bit outside of the capacity of your average kind of volunteer group for a library. So it might like really just increase cost very marginally to have that additional work, and that kind of establishes an infrastructure that you can then build upon in future phases, you know, years down the road. So that was some of my concerns with the reading garden, really just in the spirit of trying to make sure that we are not leaving you with a site or a landscape, an outdoor area that is either too onerous to do anything with, or too costly, or presents problems with, you know, accessibility that would be really a challenge for or could be a challenge for you to confront down the road when perhaps this is the opportunity really to look at those things. You know, with that, I'm not sure if there are any other things, Dominic or Lily, anyone, if you'd like to point out, be glad for you to chime in.
Sure. Thanks, Greg. That was great. I see Penny's hand is up, so I wonder if we give you an opportunity. There are other slides and plantings that Stimson and Greg will present on. So, but before we move on, I wonder if we, you know, initially get to you, Penny, and then open it up to the group as to, you know, Greg's question on, you know, let's discuss the reading garden and the library's intention for that. Penny? Not sure if you accidentally raised your hand there.
Penny, you're muted. Everybody's muted.
Thanks. As I've been looking at this, I would have found it very helpful to have the wetlands and the 25-foot buffer zone displayed on here. I'm thinking about the notice of intent, and just visually, it would be useful to have that on there.
Yeah.
So that was just a general comment about everything you said. And I think everything I heard sounds good. It's just hard for me to visualize it clearly on the plan. It sounds like you've done a good job to moving things as much as you can in a tough site. And just a general other question is, I'm thinking about solar gain for the roof, and as the landscaping is being designed and as tree clearing is being considered, do we have I don't know what the right word is, like a limit of clearing that's required to have adequate solar gain? Has that been calculated, and do we know where that line is?
Yes, we do. I reached out to them, Penny, so we should represent that as well.
Thanks.
Yeah. So a question for the group, really, you know, to Greg's point about the reading garden, it's really something that Stimson is looking to capture for the pricing set that we're going to submit on next week. And, you know, knowing that the current location is most likely not going to work with the proposed well location that we're working along with Fuss and O'Neill on. You know, your sense, you know, in a large picture, we're really considering the design development landscape scheme as the fully desired and realized landscape scheme for this project, and then to potentially, you know, see how pricing comes back. And, you know, that includes the reading garden, as far as should the reading garden be phased, as Greg said, should we include infrastructure so that it can at least be ADA accessible, considering grading and the work required for that, and what you guys had envisioned for the reading garden for this project.
I guess one question that I would have is when you have that marked for the reading garden, as you do here on the screen, the reason that it can't be where it's located is because of that square that you're thinking is what?
Well, some type of hard pavement, maybe concrete unit pavers, could be a concrete pad. It could be stone dust, which is like a granular stone dust material with we've found stone dust with like a stabilizer material can work for accessibility. It's a little bit messier. It's harder to kind of keep clear in the winter. I would have to check with Fuss and O'Neill to see if that would how that material might be viewed in regards to the well buffer, the 100-foot well buffer. But generally it's inferior. I mean, typically we might specify the stone dust material for like a pathway, but maybe not where you're going to occupy and say turn a wheelchair, maybe. And I also will say that this feature, this sort of pad, call it, or terrace, let's say, could be drawn bigger than you might need. It could be significantly smaller than that. And I think, let's put aside the buffers and the boundaries for a moment. I just talk about kind of what this garden might be. I mean, I guess what I was envisioning is that you would have sort of a minimal area that is accessible technically, legally, and then perhaps just an additional sort of pathway of some kind. Could be, could even be wood chips, could be stone dust, sort of a loop. And maybe just we find a few nodes that might be, proximate to special trees, special stone features, just kind of clear areas. It's an opportunity we could work on together, really, to kind of walk through the area, whatever area we define as being the kind of general scope of the reading garden, and decide, much in the way that you probably would do with a volunteer group, to kind of just walk out there and say, hey, what is speaking to us? What's looking cool? And then we figure out how to literally connect the dots. And so these various nodes that I'm talking about could be a series of logs to sit on. It could be a flat clearing area where you just have a couple Adirondack chairs, or it could be a bench or something that is purchased. It could be something more sort of communal, like a small sort of like a council ring, or some kind of gathering of stones that allows maybe 6 or 8 people to gather in a kind of an outdoor classroom almost arrangement. It really kind of could encompass any of those types of things, and it could grow over time. It's really sort of very flexible. But what I was really imagining is that as part of the contract built by others, that we would recommend that you consider that the accessible portion of this reading garden feature be built by, a professional contractor, if it does indeed need to be something more, hard and kind of, let's just say, defensibly accessible from a technical perspective, a legal perspective, which we've just found, for example, the things that you can't, I don't know how much folks have, are aware of this, but, for example, things like pavers that have like joints that are too wide, or changes in elevation greater than 1/2 inch. Those are all things that are restricted under accessibility code. So the kind of execution of an accessible path in a public building like this is something that I typically would recommend to a client to have designed and built by professional contractors under the scope of a contract like what we're preparing. And we can work to pare it down, minimize it, to make it as, really right size as it needs to be. I think probably what you're seeing is, again, it's probably bigger than it might need to be, but there's a bit of subjectivity there. So that's really the concern for raising it now, and trying to just advise you to consider how we might develop just that limited portion as part of this contract versus saddling you with that responsibility down the road.
Dale, you have your hand up.
I think that what Greg is saying is sound, but I also worry about cost creepage. At the end of round one, we had sort of said that we were going to forego all of the outside structure stuff. And there certainly is an economy of scale of doing it now. But I just wonder if it's not entering into the realm of creepage that, we can't afford.
Thank you. Brad?
I think what you're suggesting is we would likely need to move that reading garden as it's currently drawn out because it's likely too close to the well. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think you're also saying that doing some of the major work, the earth moving, would be cheaper now and probably better. I agree with Dale. We need to know the cost, but I mean, both of those to me make a lot of sense if we can pull that off. I agree with you that getting that kind of work done to me makes a lot of sense in advance, and doing it when you already have equipment there makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate your looking at it from the standpoint of, well, where might it fit? I don't think we're ready to say what we want yet. What we want to do is leave the potential for a good reading garden. And what you were talking about to me does all that. So thank you.
Marianne, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Okay, thanks, Elaine. So I'm gonna go back to what Dale just said and say that my first priority is that when the cost estimate comes in, that we can afford to build this building. And if we, and there seems to me to be a fair amount of open space around the building. And I think that it would be nice to just sort of get in there and then see how it all feels. And then after sort of living in the library for a while, then decide what kind of outside features we'd like to have and figure out, as a community, how we want to go about paying for it. But I'm really, I'm just really concerned that this cost estimate will come in and we'll have to start cutting stuff. And I'd rather not include that now. So that
Marianne, if I may, I would respectfully suggest to the committee that the designer do the legwork now, and at least in concept represent what may be desired at the conclusion of the project, and include the full scope of the work as an alternate. And we can structure it as an alternate in the estimate, and we'll know what the standalone cost for that is. And budget permitting, we could do the same thing as a bid alternate on bid day. And if pricing is favorable, we could elect to take it. And if pricing is not favorable, it could be bypassed and deferred to the future. But at least you're dealing with numbers and concepts. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Neil. Then I have a question. So that gray square that's not in the right location, how big is that?
It looks like 10 to 12 feet
Okay.
square, right, Greg? Something like
Yeah,
that.
I
And
think
then
that
there's
that's
an
about right.
accessible pathway to it. Okay.
That's right. The alternate approach, I was going to suggest that myself. I think that that's a great way to do it. You'll have it carved off separately. And I do think that I would like to make sure, and we can talk more with Fuss and O'Neill, who understand this process better, but understand that, you know, how and where on the site you would be allowed to proceed with developing a reading garden down the road from a permitting perspective. So in other words, citing it in a way that would you know, prevent having to revisit that process, which nobody wants.
Penny, you have your hand up.
Well, first, I was going to say exactly what Neil said, but much less eloquently, so thank you. And I agree with what Greg just said as well. I don't want to go back through the notice of intent process again. So if we can at least have a placeholder and know what it would cost, I would feel much better. We may decide we can't afford it now, but we would know.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I agree with everything that's been said here from Dale on up, that we don't want cost creep, but we do need to know how much that costs and have it as a carve out. And hoping that we could get it in, but if we can't, we can't. But at least having that option available. Yes, Marianne.
I have another question about how big something is. So
Okay.
what is the distance from the driveway loop? What is the entire distance of that from, you know, east to the west with the donut in the middle, with the hole in the middle?
We could get that to you, Marianne.
Okay.
I don't know if I have that. Lily, that's something we can kind of calculate quickly and we'll get that to you, Marianne.
Okay, great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I have one other question too. Greg, you said that there was it was going to be 20 feet from the building to the curb, and you had your line drawn. It was more on the south side of the entryway, and I'm looking at it and it looks like a little bit more north is the cutout that's closer. So which one is actually 20 feet?
I
Dominic,
think
would you mind?
yeah.
Would you mind just zooming in, maybe?
I'll zoom in for you.
Thanks.
I believe that 20-foot line that Greg was referring to was the volume, the bar volume of the building. So it is kind of that southern. If you can see my cursor, I believe you can.
Yes.
So it's this line and this line. So
I thought you meant from
from this line,
the handicap spot to the building itself. What was that
here?
Yeah, what was that measurement?
So it's only pinched at the teen room. So the teen room is a pop out to the larger rectangular volume, and then it actually comes back in. The reason that you're seeing this larger, you're actually seeing the roof overhang, right? So I believe that then at the teen room, it would be slightly less by 3 or 4 feet. So you would be at, 16 or 17 feet then to the curb. Yep.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No questions, but anyway, thank you so much. I know that.
May I ask Greg one more quick question? As I look at this plan, it's hard to read this, but are you proposing that the field grow in? It looks like it's shown as wooded area now, or is that just an artifact of what you put down there?
I think that is an artifact, but I guess what I would regarding that question, I think we should just address it really quickly. There is a kind of a tree line that exists currently, and I think, Penny, as we had discussed in the field, that the zone. Let me see if I can just change my color really fast. The zone, sort of open zone, that as part of our NOI process, that we confront in some way the issue of maintaining that clear area almost exactly the way it is today. And I think what we can revise this rendering to make it look a little, to kind of match with that. So it's not the intent that we're allowing that to grow in. However, as you maybe mentioned, there may be some resistance, and there has been some demonstrated resistance from the Conservation Commission regarding continued mowing of that space. But I'll just reiterate for this group that I think what I've discussed with Dominic and Penny in the field is that our design intent would be to maintain the openness of the existing field, pretty much as is, and that there would not be any, there's no need to touch that space. We would just simply maintain the mowing regime, the minimal mowing regime that would keep that clear, which in my view is just once per year.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. I would say that the Conservation Commission is likes that field, and I think although the issue of mowing has been troublesome over the last year, I think a plan can be worked out to mow it once a year. And I think they would like that.
Any other questions for Greg? I know you're on a tight schedule, so thank you for
We have some other slides, Elaine, just to describe plantings. I can go to the next slide, Greg.
okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail here that folks can review at their convenience. But basically, we're working with Fuss and O'Neill, who understand pretty intimately the types of plants, sizes, species, et cetera, that the commission is typically looking for, and we're in alignment with that. And really just looking to kind of, I guess the other piece here that we have yet to fully comprehend, we're sort of waiting on some field work, et cetera, is a tree replacement program that might be imposed on us to account for the trees that are being taken for the project. And so in other words, well, what I mean to say is that, you're seeing a number of trees being proposed going in here, which is all good. But what I mean to say is we don't yet understand how that balances out against a required replacement program. So that's, I mean, I feel pretty confident about what we've got, but we may need to adjust this to satisfy that requirement, A, or B, define what that deficiency is and then ask for relief in the permitting process. In other words, if we look at what that delta is and say, gee, we can't afford it, or we don't want to plant that much, then we just simply ask for relief. But it needs to be accounted prior to really understanding how those two things, how they balance out, essentially.
Do you know when we will have information on which trees are in the zone for clearing?
We're waiting on Fuss and O'Neill's limit of work line, which is linked to the stormwater plan that they're developing. So once that stormwater grading plan is defined, we can then really lock in this limit of work line. So currently, as depicted, you are seeing an estimation by Stimson about where we can draw this limit of work line. And it depends on grading. We need the final calcs from Fuss and O'Neill, really, to define exactly where that is. Once we have that, we'll have the surveyor stake that on site, and then Greg will be able to do a takeoff on the site.
Greg, you mentioned relief in the context of a tree replacement program. And when we had an informal conversation with Miriam DeFont a while back, I think it was her that suggested that there might be some counterbalancing amenities that we might propose as a way to offset potential relief that we're asking for. So I was just wondering, one of the ones that we've talked about with you is the knotweed that's along Leverett Road at the north edge of the site. And I was just wondering how you guys are planning on accounting for that work. In other words, we probably want to hold that back initially and keep it in reserve in the event that we need to offer up something additional like that. And I was curious about that, and also if there were other measures that you guys had identified that might be a way to potentially offset a request for relief.
I will say that the fact that you're nudging up to the 25-foot buffer zone is going to require a lot of relief from this commission. So we've already included remediation of invasive plants, of which there are many on the site. I think the knotweed is the least of the, is probably the easiest to deal with. So that is all in the information that we've been working with April on.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think just in terms of developing a sort of a menu or a roster of cards that we could play that are will be both meaningful to the commission and also that we can stomach, that from a budget perspective. I think some of the other things that were discussed were I think attempting to get some kind of credit for work that has been already taken place. I know that there's a relationship to the current remediation work that's gone under the current NOI for the site cleanup. There's other activities regarding waste removal throughout the site that either have taken place or could continue to take place to a further extent. There certainly, as Penny mentioned, there's no shortage of invasives to organize any kind of volunteer invasive removal activities that could then be accounted for in some way. And then I guess finally, the perhaps supplementing this planting plan outside of the limit of work to other areas of the site that might benefit from native replanting. That'd probably be the last one on my list due to the cost implications. But if we just sort of had a few things at the ready, just that the team can kind of understands as being acceptable, palatable measures before we go into the hearings and start kind of trading horses with them about that stuff. That probably makes sense. And there might be a way also, in addition, for perhaps the estimator to provide some basic costs for some of those activities to help define or help give some reassurance prior to making commitments that what we're signing up for essentially. And I don't know at the point of the NOI hearings if there'll be updated pricing information, but what we could probably even like on our end, we could provide some kind of rough order of magnitude costs for certain activities, certain costs for remediation plants and things like that.
Sounds good. Greg, I know we have a couple of other slides. You want me to move on?
Yeah, sure. Just real quick, and I apologize. I will have to step off at 2, everyone. But the purpose here is to just put some names to faces, or faces to names, if you will. The previous slide showed seed mixes, 3 seed mixes, and so we don't have the species identified per picture on this slide, but everything here is specified on the previous slide under New England wetland mix. So this is kind of just an attempt to kind of give you the sort of overview of the palette of plants in this particular mix. Same with the next slide, a restoration mix, more used for kind of graded or disturbed sites. Various types of grasses, asters, Joe Pye weed, things of that nature. Things that, really the intent is to replicate more or less things that you all are quite familiar seeing on the side of the road and in various native parts of town. Again, the wildflower mix, just a third mix. I think probably a little bit maybe higher cost, so we've kind of reserved this for certain areas, and the restoration mix is more kind of broadly implemented throughout the site. So, it's really none of these, in my view, should be a surprise. They really should be, like I said, things that you're accustomed to seeing. New England wetland plants, as you may know, is down in South Hadley, and they supply seed to all kinds of restoration projects, but they are, they're locals as well. So happy to take any comment on this either now or, in writing, after the fact or through the next few rounds. But, essentially we will continue to have an opportunity to refine this after DD as well. But this was just really looking at, again, just kind of giving you guys a visual so you can get a bit more of a feel of the character of what we're proposing.
Thanks a lot, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I am going to have to sign off, but thanks again. And, we'll be happy to take any further comments or questions through Dominic, and that, looking forward to the next time that we all can meet.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too.
Thanks,
Thank
Greg
you
and
all.
Lily.
Yes, fine.
Okay.
Great.
Does there- anybody want to make any comments before we move on from this? Although I know Greg's not here, but any comments? Nobody. All right. So shall we go back to our regular meeting? We will get these slides. Is that right, Dominic?
That's correct. Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
Yep. So we have other updates. I'm happy to pause here, Elaine, and let you kind of go back to meeting minutes, and then we can jump back in to some other slides.
Let's finish. You're
Okay.
here with the slides. Let's finish with this.
Sure, no problem. So the intent today was to also have Fuss and O'Neill present on the landscape plan, but they are still working on the stormwater. We're still waiting on test results, so they're scrambling, and we have updated schemes from them, but nothing is locked in stone until they have their test results back. And so I wasn't comfortable in sharing, kind of work in progress without anything really being backed up with the test results that they need. So what I am showing you here is the schematic design site plan, really just to remind you of where we were and to say that Fuss and O'Neill are really using this concept, this high-level concept, as the strategy moving into DD. So the fact that, the building and the parking has moved closer together and we've shifted it to the north 20 feet, impacts grading somewhat. But generally we're looking at, a swale system here with a basin discharging to the lower portions of the site. And we, hope we are still yet to define whether we need this chamber beneath parking. There is potential, if we get good results back, that we won't need to rely on this as a retention system for stormwater management, but yet to see. So we can't really define that yet. Some of the roof stormwater runoff will be incorporated here with site drainage as well. But again, quick snapshot, and we'll get you that information once we have it in hand. I did want to include, and we discussed this previously with Greg, this is really a close approximation of the proposed well location, meeting its requirements. So as far as the 100-foot buffer to the property, and you can see, if it is as close to it as it can get to this western property line, you could approximate that, it really does implicate the current reading garden location. So we discussed this previously, so I'll move on. Can everybody see this? I know I'm slightly cutting off the page, but this way at least everybody can really see the details. So I wanted to represent this, a plan associated with the eastern elevation, really to show that we've looked at reducing the size of the teens window here. We were favoring, there's a few benefits here. We're reducing the fenestration here, but yet still keeping to the scheme so that staff sitting at the circ desk can still see through and be able to monitor patrons coming and going. You're still getting a lot of light coming in. But if you see here on the plan, we're able to now increase the height of the shelving for teens and therein be able to provide more collections. Previously, we had 126 linear feet of collections, Marianne. If we were to include this out, the linear shelves on the outside, but now by increasing the height here of these, we've increased to 161. So that's really the only plan changes that has been revised since the last time we presented to you.
Dominic, does the shelving outside of teen room now go to adult collection? And so is that number that you just had up there
it could
inclusive of,
yes,
or not of that shelving?
It is inclusive of, and so we can now give it back to adults collections, Marianne.
Yeah.
And sorry, I don't have that number here. So I think we were very close. We were just shy, and so now that kind of gets us over the threshold. So
yeah.
Let me make that revision in how that's delineated. So this outdoor shelving now that Matt's talking about will be assigned to the adults collections. I wanted to get some exterior elevations to you as well, just to confirm where we are calling out operable windows. So again, in all locations, we're calling out for there to be some operable awning windows. So starting at the west top of the page, we have an operable window here for the staff workroom. We also, this is the north facing window that I'm highlighting here with my cursor down at the bottom elevation. So you will have two operables for the staff workroom. The meeting room will have a couple of operables as well. The east elevation, which is at entry, we have two operables for the teens, one for the director, two for the study, and then some for children's as well. That's a clear story glaze condition here. And then the children's north facing glass wall, we have three operables, and then we have two for the adults area as well. Also to note, and we're still working on this, we need air intake and exhaust for the mechanical systems that are being housed in the plenum space for the building. And so we're looking at incorporating how those grills are defined in the elevation. We need a certain surface area. So this one here, Marianne, is integrated within the window assembly, or it would be above that. We're owning it at this point, but just wanted to kind of call attention to that there will be some elements to the exterior envelope that, you know, respond to the mechanical systems that we have. For instance, we have vent pipes that will penetrate the roof. We're going to account for those. We'll have those in the set. They won't be highly visible, but you will see them around the ridge. You have these, you know, intake exhaust vents. We're currently showing one here. We're looking at resizing this to maybe take the form of, you know, a window, so it's a little more integrated. But I just wanted to kind of key that in. Another element here that you are just picking up on is we're looking at a placeholder for a bench currently at the entry porch area. We have another view that actually you can kind of pick it up here in the elevation. So it would be an integrated wood bench, or this is what we're holding at the moment. So we'd like to, you know, get your input on that. This could be done in different ways. It could be more of a landscape element bench, but we feel like an integrated bench into the wood exterior might be a nice, clean way to handle that. I have another image of this that you can reference as well. Apologies on this site plan is ended up being a little bit grayed out. But this is a site plan to represent site lighting. So this is our placeholder strategy. We still need to perform photometric analysis to lock in the locations of this, but this is really highlighting a strategy that we would use light poles to illuminate entry, drive, and parking, and then light bollards, which we need by code around the ADA egress paths. I'd also like to hold a library sign light at entry. This is something that we're going to continue to develop. I believe this project, you know, that it would be great to have a library sign at entry, and it's something that we could do backlit illuminated sign lettering, you know, just some sort of element there. So I'm just holding a placeholder there to get electrical out. Before I move on, I see a few hands up.
Dale.
Yes, hi, Dominic, could we move back to the prior screen with the east and south elevation?
Yeah.
And see, you had a side, another, your show, yeah. So my question is, you know, I was not a fan of the prior roof design over the front entrance. And I would like to know, I see two representations here on the north and the south of, I think, the same roof. On the south, it's sort of shown as going straight across. And on the north, it's shown as with the reverse pitch. So, you know, I still have all the same questions about that roof, how it's going to be finished. You know, is it going to be reverse pitch? Is it going to be a flat pitch? All of that stuff. And whether or not you want to address that now or
answers
later.
for you today, Dale.
Pardon me?
We have some slides to address it in a couple minutes.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Marianne?
Hi. Okay, so now can we go back to the lighting?
Yeah.
So Dominic, you said that the light bollards around the ADA accessible pathways around the building are required by code. Are the light pole, this light pole up at the front? So I'm thinking that this is a library in the middle of the country, and we want minimal lighting this up at night. So if there's a program happening at night or if it's open at night, then the building will have its lights on. And if it's closed, I don't necessarily want people to see it in the dark. And people don't see my house when they drive by, and it's dark. So how do other people feel about that?
I also,
Well, but before people answer, we do have an obligation to provide the minimum amount of code lighting. We totally agree with you that we do not want this thing to be overlit. And Dominic and I were just talking earlier about the pole lighting. Do we really need to, are we obligated by code to put pole lights on the driveway? We're waiting on an answer for that. We don't know yet. We know that we need the bollards at a minimum. The pole lights, typically it's more for kind of wayfinding and safety. It's less code related from what I recall, but we are looking into that. But we agree with you that we want this to be as minimally lit as possible. At the same time, we don't want it to feel unsafe. It's a public building. It gets dark early in the winters, people walk into their cars. I know it's unlikely that anything is going to happen in Shutesbury, but I think having some minimal amount of light around the building is not an unreasonable goal. I agree. We want to balance out what we've got with the fact that it's in the middle of the country. We don't want it to feel like a spaceship landed.
is it ridiculous to think of these as being something that would be motion sensitive, so they wouldn't be on all the time? Only if
I think a time clock is something that is feasible, I believe. I think in terms of security and the ability for the police department to come here after hours, early hours in the morning or whatnot, we need some more definitive answers on that. But I think there are opportunities to control this if it is required by code. Can it be something that is controlled a little more to the opening hours, but or staff being there, things like that. So I'll get an answer to you, Elaine, on that.
Thank you. Lauren, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I agree that I think the chief of police needs to be in on this conversation because it is a security issue. And her opinion would be valuable.
Okay. We'll get her involved. Penny.
Silly question. What is a light bollard?
A light bollard is it's basically a light source that's mounted on a pole, but it's a short version, 3 foot tall, something like that. You see, bollard is really describing the post condition. You have security bollards, which are located around certain equipment around the building to protect the building from or that element from a car accidentally reversing it. You might see that around certain elements around the building, but a light bollard is the same kind of thing with a light in it. But they can be, I was talking to Stimson about what these could be. We're looking at a very minimal design, as kind of small as we can handle, something that has minimal diameter. So
we've also used flush lights before, but I worry that for code they wouldn't qualify because there's the potential that they can get covered with snow. But it's the kind of light, it's like it almost looks like a floor outlet. It's got a slightly raised profile, but you can walk across it, and then it has a very narrow opening that emits light, and the light literally just kind of grazes across the surface. We've used them before in the exterior, but it was in covered locations where it was less of an issue that they might get covered over. So but to Dominic's point, we do want to pick something that is visually minimal. So they'll be low height, relatively low output, and all of the fixtures that we're looking at, whether they're bollards or their pole lights for parking, are going to be full cutoff fixtures. So the light is only directed down to the ground. It's not you're not throwing light everywhere. You're not, we don't want any light going up. And that helps a lot in terms of, the kind of relative, the light in an otherwise very dark setting. So we'll have, in all these places, we'll have full cutoff fixtures.
So each one of these red dots that I'm seeing, those would either be bollards or poles.
That's correct. Yep.
And the ones that are on the parking along the side of the building, along the side, yes,
Yep. All of these would be bollards.
all of those are
Yep.
bollards. Okay.
So it's a little difficult to see. These I've called out as EX12s.
I see.
And then the EX10s
see.
Are these. And then there's the one which is undefined, EX11. It's really just to get electrical out here so that we could at least, if there's an appetite for that, illuminate an entry sign in some way.
And that could be as simple as like halo lit letters.
Right.
If you guys know what halo lit is, it's when you have like a three-dimensional standoff letter, and then behind that 3D letter, there's a light source. So the light kind of bounces off the background that the letter is mounted to, and it silhouettes the lights. It's a very indirect way of lighting something. Is that you're not shining light at a sign. You're not putting a floodlight, onto a sign. It's a much more kind of understated way of lighting something.
So here's another probably silly question, but that one with the library signage, it seems like you're going to be pulling electricity all the way out to that side, whereas could that be a solar light?
It could be.
And then it wouldn't have to have any electrical wiring to it.
That's a good point. We will be running power all the way to this pole, if required. So we would have to trench a little further to get power out to that light source. But yes, it could be solar in the case of winter and snow, or maybe leaf debris or whatnot. You may find that does not perform as well. That's not necessarily a big issue.
Right. I have them around my house, and it doesn't really matter. They even actually shine through the snow.
Right. Nice. So this is really kind of a placeholder to something that we think definitely enhances the entry experience. But again, it's your call on that for sure. We don't really need lighting there. It's not a code requirement for the sign. You may get borrowed light from
this is really an effort to capture scope for DD pricing. We may find that before we issue the set, we're able to tweak this layout a little bit to maybe reduce a couple of fixtures. We'll get an answer about the requirements as it relates to code for the driveway and parking. We know that we need them around the building. We have building mounted lights at every exit door. That's a requirement of code. In addition to that, you're supposed to light the accessible pathway around the building. The spacing here is based on some photometrics from another project. We've got to do a little more work to confirm that this spacing is the right spacing. We may find that we can space them a little further and maybe reduce.
How wide is that donut?
Make sure that we're capturing enough scope and pricing.
So here I've got about a 10-foot radius around each bollard. And then I think it's 75 around these street lights. So they kind of overlap their the radius of illuminance.
I was wondering the donut though in the middle of the
donut. Here, I'm sorry.
Yeah. How wide is that? Why do
that looks to me like it depends. It's like 40 plus feet across here, 50 maybe.
And that, by the way, that landscaped area there is also doing some work for us in terms of stormwater.
Yeah.
That
Right.
would be planted. That's a
Yeah.
kind of bioretention area.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I'd have to go and I want to go and look at the school at night and see what their lighting situation is, just to see how much light we really want to have or that we need to have. But okay.
I think we are definitely on border lane with code minimum, and we are not looking to, add any more than we need. So
Okay.
we will definitely go that avenue.
Okay.
Yeah, there's from what I remember, there's pole lighting at the school. Just remembering the last time we were there for the community meeting, it's pretty minimal though.
Right.
And I think as we've said, we don't want to overlight this, so we'll confirm those requirements.
Okay.
And reduce this as much as we can.
Okay.
So the next plan, obviously in the background since we met last, there's been a lot of coordination and as our consultants have been tightening up all their drawings. I just wanted to quickly bring your attention to the mechanical and HVAC drawing. So this is showing all the air handling units laid out within the plan of our building. Starting on the left here, we do have a couple of exterior units. These are condensing units. This layout is being tweaked as we speak. So I think by the time we submit for DD, this will be slightly revised. We need some more clearances around these elements, and we will also coordinate this with the path that goes around here as well. But generally, as we previously held, the concept to stow a lot of this equipment in the plenum space or above the ceiling, of this kind of eastern zone of the building is working for us. We also have a low ceiling in this central zone here, and that's where we're able to contain all of this. The concept still is to supply, and return air generally through this continuous wall along grid line 2. And that's how we serve the meeting room, lobby, adults, and children's. So kind of high level concept. Things are going well with this equipment. So I just wanted to kind of bring this to your attention. Next, we have some roof.
Could I ask you one question?
Yeah, sure.
How much access is needed for that, for maintenance or whatever?
Yeah, it's a good question. Most of these units need replacement filters. So access is definitely something that we're considering. We had previously talked about the ACT ceilings being modular and something that you can, pop out, so that all of this equipment is actually being hung from the roof structure. So it's not being mounted to the ceiling, the lower ceiling. It is mounted to the upper roof. And so you won't see this. It'll be concealed above the ceiling with the ACT panels. We are going to hold 2 foot by 4 foot size ACT panels. And so when it comes time to replace those filters, you just are able to, dislodge that. And with a small ladder, you can get up there and just stand on the ladder, make the replacement. So it's very simple, but access for all of these units is going to be considered. Yeah.
So you will just be having a ladder that we would open the ceiling panel and go in there?
That's right. And you would just stand on the ladder. You wouldn't even need to be fully up in the plenum space. So they're going to be kind of low. So the person performing the maintenance, when you see them do that, you probably see, the lower portion of their body still on the ladder, visible in the room, and they just kind of have their head up in the plenum space, taking filters out, replacing that way. Yeah.
What happens in 20 years when the equipment needs to be replaced? How do you access it then?
Then those ceiling So the ACT ceilings are installed on a grid system, and those grids can be removed incrementally, I believe, Matt. So you can take kind of portions of that out. It's definitely installed and in a modular way.
Thanks.
Marianne, are you going to
Yeah.
be up there on that ladder?
No, I'm not. But we have a heater in the ceiling, and Chris changes the filters.
Okay.
And Chris is my husband, for those of you who don't know. And we had to have the heater replaced, and they, the heater replacement guys came and took out the old one and put in a new one. So I've seen this all in, live and in person, and it's not nearly as daunting as it sounds.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
As long as we keep you and your husband.
So moving on to roof details here, I have a roof plan, which shows you the location of the photovoltaic arrays, and also the portion of roof here at entry. So what I wanted to show you here is that to work with the rain fall and snow, and to be able to have runoff to either side of the edges, we're going to incorporate a cricket here, which is a kind of lifted condition, and that allows the water and snow to kind of drain off to either side. It's basically a drainage path that you create on this portion of the roof. I've indicated 2 downspouts on either side that would collect rainfall. General strategy for most of the roof is to allow water to sheet off the roof and be caught in kind of a catchment trough that we're going to have around the building. It'll be like a gravel perimeter. We will introduce a gutter at this location here that I'm highlighting, because we have 2 exit doors, one for the meeting room and one for the lobby. And then we have an exit door at the adults room, whereby we're going to actually incorporate a metal rain diverter. And so you can't quite see the line here, but it's a small metal lip that's going to take on this angle, and it's going to capture the rainwater that is kind of caught in this zone and direct it left and right. And again, we'll have a drip strip around here, like a gravel drip strip around the perimeter that will catch that. So there's a few entry and exit locations in the building that we're going to account for the rainwater with this gutter, and then with these 2 downspouts on the either side of this roof. Yes, I have a couple of questions before I move on.
Can you just tell me what the term is for what you're doing over the adult room? You said
a rain diverter. It's a metal rain diverter.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be a small metal lip that is proud of the finished roof, and that basically diverts the rainwater either side.
And that'll be at the children's exit as well?
No, so because the children's exit and we also have an exit door here at the meeting room,
Right.
they're both the gabled ends of
Okay.
this roof, and so we're not going to see the rainwater that is caught on the roof shed off that way.
Thank you.
Yep. Lauren?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Dominic. 2 questions about the rain diverter.
Mhm.
One is, at the last meeting, we talked at some length about whether that perimeter portion of the roof was going to be standing seam or lap seam. Has that been determined yet? If it is standing seam, is it, because it looks the same as the other roof to me now?
Yeah.
How
So
does
it
that
will-
work with a rain diverter?
It does, and so yeah, we do have 2 systems. So the standing seam is the main upper roof, and we have a small eave condition here, which is
Yeah.
going to be flat seam roof.
Okay.
So same product without the expression of a seam, but it is panelized. And so when you install them, those panels interlock. And so you will get a reading of the seams in line with the standing seam above.
Okay, so the
Yep.
rain, how tall is the rain diverter? And I'm asking this because we've had this discussion in past meetings that we're seeing that the severity of storms and the force of the water coming down on the roof is getting more intense, and I expect will continue to get more intense. And you know, if it's 3/4 of an inch, that's not going to stop.
That's right. I think it's 4 to 6. I have to confirm that for you. I know we were looking at products. I don't have that in my head right now. But it needs to be substantial.
Okay, good. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stephen.
Dominic, what's the offset between the two roofs? It's the thickness of the insulation plus the cover board, right? So it's in the 5 to 7 inch range.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
the rain diverter, the height of the rain diverter would be the same height as that. So it's in that kind of 5 to 7 inch high range.
Yep.
And it would sit sort of in, 4 to 6 inches in front of that transition edge. So basically it's acting like an open-ended gutter that's running along this 2 sloping sides of that cut section of the roof.
Yep. I saw another hand up, I believe.
Yes, I had my hand up.
Oh, yeah.
Stephen.
Sorry, Stephen.
That's okay. With the front entry roof, with the crickets and the use of the TPO, what is the detail for the connection between the TPO and the metal?
Yeah,
Specifically,
it's a good question. I have a detail actually that I'll show you guys.
Okay,
and I came prepared today.
And then maybe your details show me. So that the TPO figure is, we'll say, a 25-year roof, right?
30. Yep.
Okay, 30. So at some point, the TPO is going to need to be replaced. So I guess the question is, does the detail allow for that?
It does. We actually engaged a metal roof manufacturer, and they have a design build kind of outfit within their company. And so we've been in close communication with them about how to correctly detail this. And they assured us that with the 30-year warranty for both the metal and TPO roof, that any repair would be covered under that warranty, including the removal of some of the metal panels required to make that repair. So so we got assurances from them that that is possible. Yeah.
It's possible to replace the TPO.
That's right.
Minimal disturbance to the metal.
Metal. That's correct.
Okay. And you said you have a detail.
Yes. Yeah. Getting to that.
Great.
Best to last. So again, this view here was to show that effectively the cricketing that is happening behind this upturned roof is a measure to raise the condition there and allow water to drain left and right, as indicated in the plan. I also wanted to highlight, Marianne, that this is our considered bench condition that you get a different view of. But going to the details. So this is a section cut through this upturned roof, and it's kind of around where we have the sign currently shown. So what you're looking at here is the structure, the glulam structure coming out through the exterior envelope, and then the upturn being supported by this additional glulam joist coming out here. Up to the right here is the main roof, the standing seam portion of the roof, where we have currently drawn at 7 inches of insulation. And then when you get to this point, you are then outboard of the exterior envelope, and then you get to this upturned roof condition. So here you can see a faint line that's representing the top portion of the cricketing. So this section is actually cutting through, kind of halfway where the cricketing is happening. And you can see here, there is an increase in thickness here. So effectively, as you get to the ridge of this cricket, you are infilling this whole condition basically to allow water to run left and right in plan. So as far as finished materials, we have standing seam roof here that then starts to incorporate metal flashing that comes down to this portion here, very much at the ridge of the cricket. And from there, you have the transition of TPO that then finishes this portion of the roof, the upturned roof. Again, we will incorporate metal flashing at this end condition with correct connections. One thing to note here that we are going to revise is we're going to have a small portion of upturn of the TPO here to correctly detail this. But generally, you're seeing this is a 3-inch detail that we're going to use in the construction set. And it shows all the elements. It's not absolutely to scale in the sense that we try to represent every connection and kind of interface of different materials. So when it is actually installed, you're dealing with, minimal thicknesses of this, and it'll actually flatten out a little bit. But the way we draw this, we're kind of representing all of these different membranes and connections. The dotted line here is the air vapor barrier. That is your waterproofing. So you can see that continuing from the upper roof all the way down here. And that's kind of your safety net against, any moisture failures that happen on the exterior. This is all detailed out. So, feel free to review this. I do have another section of the
while you're on
condition.
this one, Dominic,
yeah,
one other thing to mention, we've got an end cap shown here on the purlin, which is our typical detail for exposed rafter ends. Dale, you had brought this up, I think, in an email. We did this on the last couple of timber frame libraries that we did. So it's an aluminum piece that's screwed into the end of the beam. It's slightly wider than the beam, and it hangs down a little bit below the beam, so it drips. But it's there really just to capture and protect the end grain of the member.
Yep. And quickly talking to some of these other detail points, we have roof decking, which is structural. Our structural engineer is recommending that we have this blocking cord at the edge, which is kind of creating this thickened condition. So you're seeing, a combination of structural elements, finishing elements. We need to treat this condition here, which is a process we've used on other projects, where you need a butyl sealant in between the installation of these two tongue and groove boards, and that helps create a continuation of moisture barrier for your exterior envelope. So, it's a critical moment, again, just for safety and ensuring that you have a tight envelope. I have another section for the roof eave, but there's a couple of questions.
Yeah, let's let Stephen ask his question.
Okay, well, I really appreciate the detail here. So as I look at the TPO coming up behind the metal, currently, can you, okay. Okay, so now, and then going down to the structure, you've got your ice and water shield. That's the dotted line, correct?
Yep, AVB, yep.
Okay, so behind the TPO as it turns up, there's no ice and water shield. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. So this is really your moisture. This is your fail safe, this dotted line down here, not up here. We do have a felt paper, I have to refer to the note again, that is incorporated as part of the metal roofing assembly. So that turns down. I have shared this kind of hot off the presses. And again, you know, the benefit of us working with this roofing manufacturer, they're calling out that the TPO should actually come up and lap further up. And that's going to kind of close this condition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. But then let's go to, say, 30 years down the road when you need to replace the TPO, but not the metal.
Yep.
Not going to be able to replace up under the metal.
Well, you have to lift the metal roof. You will have to remove some of this standing seam roof to be able to make that replacement in 30 years.
And is that something that the company you're working with does regularly?
Yes. Yeah. This is a sound detail to them owning a 30-year warranty for both elements and the interface.
Okay. Thank you.
Does the same company make both the TPO and the metal roof?
That's right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dale, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that we're only seeing a 30-year, I suppose a guarantee on a steel roof for 30 years is still a 30-year guarantee.
Correct.
But I mean, I put a metal roof on a barn 30 years ago that looks great, actually more than 30 years ago, and it still looks great today. So
right.
I'm anticipating a much longer life than 30 years for that metal roof, hopefully.
Right.
But I am concerned about the TPO metal interface and that detail. I wish that there wasn't a fascia there, because I see that as a weak link in the whole thing. I wish they could just sort of come together. I do appreciate the flat trajectory, more or less, of the cricket. You know, in other words, you know, that it's not a straight pitch back, it's not an inverted V. I think that makes a difference. But you know, we're as a committee, you know, we have to look at how we're spending our money on this project. And I'm not sure. I mean, it's a judgment call on my part. I just don't know how enthusiastic I am about defending money being spent on this. I still am not a fan of this thing. I would rather see the roof go straight out, personally.
But Dale, that wouldn't eliminate the transition, right? We would still have a connection between the flat roof and the sloping roof.
Well, I like I mean, I haven't been to Norwell, but I like the idea of sort of the flat top that was coming straight out perpendicular from the building lower down, you know, separate the two.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge of that is that you then have a transition from roof to wall, wall to roof again. You've got that section of wall between the two roofs that has, you know, there's a transition detail at the top and at the bottom of that. And it, you know, it's also a place where snow can collect. In Norwell, one of the differences between Norwell and here is that in Norwell, we've got a 3.5 foot, I think it's a 4 foot overhang of the roof from the wall, which makes a huge difference. I mean, we can't do that here because of the limitations in square footage with the roof area and trying to manage, you know, the sprinkler requirement. So we can't have a deep overhang like we did on Norwell or on Eastham. And that 3 to 4 foot overhang makes all the difference, right? It protects that section of wall between the roof. But I actually think this is a better detail than if we were to have detailed the previous condition with the flat roof, intersecting the wall and then having that wall go up to a kind of minimal eave and transitioning again at that point.
Okay. Well, I've said what I have to say about it. We'll have to see.
The other, just in terms of the warranty, you know, the company that we've been talking to is Garland. What they're saying is that and there's no guarantee, obviously, that they will do this job, but and we'll have to sort of figure out how the spec is being written to accommodate this. But what they're saying is that they would own both the membrane roof and the metal roof as a complete system. It's not two separate installers, two separate manufacturers. It's a comprehensive system that they're warranting for 30 years. It's not individual warranty for, TPO or PVC roof and a separate warranty for the metal. It's all under the same installation and material warranty of 30 years. And so if what they're saying is if they were the ones installing it and that 30-year warranty applied and the membrane roof failed at year 29 and a half, they would own whatever it takes to, either be able to lift up that metal roof and get the, 10 inches or 12 inches or whatever of overlap that the TPO will have with the metal roof, and get and make sure that all goes back together again, or taking off the metal panels and reinstalling them. What they're saying is they would own any work that's associated. Obviously, we want to make sure that the detail facilitates that replacement, because as you say, it's very possible that the metal roof will outlive the membrane roof. And so you want to make sure that it's detailed in a way that you can replace the membrane and not necessarily have to replace the metal. This is a first pass at a detail with them. I think it still requires a little bit of work. It might mean that the way that the cleat works at the edge of the standing seam roof is slightly different to help facilitate, future replacement of the membrane. I think we're not done talking through those details with those guys, and we've got the construction document phase to do that. But I guess what we are suggesting here is that we feel confident that there's a solution here, and we actually think the solution is better than where we were previously with the flat roof.
So you're talking a full system warranty, right?
Yes.
And so is Garland,
and I think we would want to write the spec that way.
yeah, is Garland the manufacturer or the installer?
Both.
Both.
And that's the way the spec will be written?
Yeah, they're actually handling spec writing for us right now. So, but we, it's got to be appropriate for a public bid job.
Sure.
But we've on different components for different projects, we've been successful in kind of this working relationship. We're doing the same with Pella. And we've done that previously on Norwell, and we were successful with them for that too. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I see this detail. As long as you're bringing that TPO up under the metal roof, I'm satisfied with this detail.
Yeah, so I received word from them early this morning, and I couldn't incorporate that into this prior to our meeting today, but that's something that I'll keep you up to date on as we move on. I have another section that we can quickly speak to if you guys are okay with this detail. So this detail is a more common roof eave condition around the perimeter of our building. And so again, what you're seeing here is, the stud wall meeting the roof condition. We have the glulam purlin coming out in a rafter tail supporting the structural tongue and groove decking. We have the roof insulation here being finished with a protection board and then the standing seam metal roof. But here we have all metal. So it's a standing roof condition, metal roof condition here, and the eave is a flat seam roof. So all the same product, just the expression of the seam is different between the two. But Lauren, to your point earlier about sheeting the water off the diverters, this is kind of the dimension that we're working with, the change in height between the main roof and then the eave condition. right? So Matt,
Yeah,
just
we'd be
mark
looking
that.
at trying to incorporate some kind of vertical element there. So basically, it's sort of, this is acting as a gutter for those two runs, but open-ended. So it's just to get it so that it's not dripping off the roof, down over the door and the wood siding at that area of the roof cutout.
Matt, just one concern is if you're creating a trap or a gutter there, are you not going to encourage ice dams to form in that valley? Like, is it still positively draining? And what maintenance is required? What maintenance would be required to make sure that you don't get ponding and freezing in that enclosure or partial?
I don't think you would get ponding because it's sloping pretty aggressively. Dominic, if you actually go to the elevation, maybe that's the best place to see it. So yeah, so it would be. Whoops. Okay, stop. It would be here and here, right? So you've got pretty positive pitch in both directions, and then here and here, it's basically open-ended. So anything that is coming in is coming out and then draining off here. And whether in the end we feel like we need downspouts or not is something we'll need to think a little more about. But that's the idea. So I think I don't foresee any real issues there with ice damming, but it's something that we'll talk through with the roofing manufacturer and get their recommendations to make sure that they are.
I think at a minimum, Matt, we would favor sort of treating it like a valley, right? Full ice and water shield, 3 feet on either side. Type thing, as opposed to
I agree with that.
Paper.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think in any transition, we're going to have ice and water.
I think you.
At this transition, we're going to need ice and water shield behind that too, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could argue the roof is so small that if you do 3 feet either side, ice and water all the way around, you're going to have very little paper on the roof. You might want to consider just doing the whole thing ice and water.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, maybe.
So they call out rosin paper but as you say, ice and water might be the way to go.
I would just ask them about it. I'm just concerned about ice dams, and metal roofs typically don't ice dam, but God, the intercepting the water flow and diverting it just has me concerned. That's all.
Okay. So that's really what I just wanted to kind of show you, our discussions with Garland about the transition between standing seam and flat seam here. Is very common practice for them, again, as the other detail. We did have again here, we're showing a metal fascia that Matt highlighted on the edge condition of these purlins. So similar to the image shown here, we have structural rafters supporting the roof, and that end condition you just want to protect from exposure, basically. So this is basically what we'd be proposing. It would match the same color as we're using for the metal trim, and it better protects the structure there. Stephen.
In your details, this one, the wall, is that 2x6?
It's a 2x6 wall.
Okay, and that one you show, I guess, 3.5 inches of fiberglass on the inside. But I think the previous detail, it looked like it was
5.5.
Yeah.
We're actually carrying 5.5. There was a discrepancy between the two. We're going to make sure we own 5.5 on the interior, and we will also include 2.5 rigid on the exterior. So the stretch code has recently been revised in July. And so we've had to revise our envelope detailing to meet code requirements now. As you see here, you'll see 5.5 inch, and we're calling for 2.5 inch rigid insulation on these. It's currently drawn at 1.5, but we're going to increase that.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
They've really overhauled the energy code thermal requirements for buildings. It's pretty extensive, and we're seeing this now in all of our projects, trying to figure out how to understand the new code requirements. But they've switched now from an R value rating to going with U value only, you know, and it used to be that there were two different paths for calculating R value of walls. It was what's in the cavity versus what's continuous on the outside. Now it's just a combined U value. So as long as we hit that U value, we still have to manage the dew point, which is, you know, where moisture happens from, you know, warm and cold air meet. And we want to make sure that that dew point happens on the exterior face of the AVB, the air vapor barrier. And so we have the balance between insulation in the cavity and insulation outboard of the sheathing and the air barrier. We still have to kind of walk that line a little bit in terms of the ratio of what's inside, what's outside. But that's why we've switched to now 5.5 inches deep on the interior and 2.5 on the exterior. It's an overall increase in thermal mass.
Dale?
What is the HERS score that you'll be looking to achieve on this building?
We're working with, we're working with Bala, our mechanical engineers, on energy modeling, and I don't have that off the top of my head, Matt. So we can get that. I don't either. Yeah.
Well, I think we need 52 now in 2023, but it's going to be 42 in 2024. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I need to get back to you on that.
Okay, all right.
We also don't. I mean, the HERS index is not one that we are typically referring to. Usually we're talking about EUI, the energy use intensity of the building, and kind of managing that number. But we will have our energy model done right after the DD set is complete, and so we can start talking about some of those things.
What are those things? What was it you asked about, Gail? What kind of index?
HERS, HERS, which is home energy. That's on the residential side. I'm not sure if it applies on the commercial side or not. Yeah, we don't. As I said, we don't typically deal with HERS, that index. But you know, we're going to meet the energy code, the stretch code. We are doing everything we can, obviously, to achieve net zero energy, as we've all talked about. And we also have an eye on our EUI, which is really the measurement that we use when we talk about how much energy a building is using. And you know, we want to be lower than an EUI of 30. EUI stands for energy use intensity. You know, 30 is a good benchmark, but and so we want to be around there. You know, I think if you look at buildings that were built, say, in the 80s, you know, the EUI is considerably higher than that for the average building. So we'll know more after we get the energy model results where we are.
Okay.
That's everything I had for you today, other than schedule and the look ahead. We are aiming for DD submission this coming Monday. we are currently, our civil engineer is currently waiting on test results, which they need to be able to properly define grading for their documentation as part of the submission. So as it stands now, we're allowing them to submit next Friday to give them kind of a buffer to roll that information in. And there will be some coordination effort with landscape as well for that Friday submission. So currently we're just waiting on the testing results for that to get that in. We're going to allow our cost estimator 2 weeks to estimate the project. Thereafter, we will, obviously evaluate that. Matt, I think we had discussed a page turn of the DD set with the group, and I don't know if we'll be. I feel like it would be good to do that with the civil and landscape drawings all together. So I don't think we'll be ready for that next week, but the following week we could potentially do a page turn comprehensively, including landscape, civil, and then architectural and MEP drawings. So
yeah, so that would be second week in November.
Yep. But we'd like to release our cost estimator with the rest of the set as they're waiting, for some supplementary drawings from civil and landscape, which will be hopefully next Friday.
Do you guys have a building committee meeting scheduled on the 7th? That's the first Tuesday of November.
Let's see. Yes. I have it on my calendar. I don't know that. Does everybody else? I mean, it just seemed like it was every few weeks I had it on my calendar, so I do have it 7th.
You're talking the 7th?
Yes.
That's fine.
Dominic, based on your conversation with Matt Kassan, do you think they'll be ready by then? That gives them an extra week, right, to the 3rd.
Yeah, which they're counting on right now. It depends on if there's further delay of the test results. It's really about making sure we really capture the full scope for the pricing estimate. We could do placeholder, but it's a little bit unconventional at DD. It'd be better to really lock down, especially grading. Site grading is kind of critical.
Yeah, and I think it's fine. Pete has plenty to do on the building and the mechanical, building systems before getting into site. So I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, in the context of the meeting that they have scheduled on the 7th, I mean, maybe what we say is we tentatively plan on joining you at that meeting to do a page turn of the full documents, assuming that we get our civil and landscape drawings by then. And if for whatever reason they don't get the information soon enough and it takes them longer, we can follow up with another date. But maybe we just say tentatively that the goal is to try to meet on the 7th.
Lauren, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would like to request that Andrea, not me, but Andrea get a copy of the full DD set by Monday morning at the latest. So she will have time to go over it before that Tuesday meeting.
Sure. Absolutely.
Monday the 30th?
The 6th.
Or Monday the 6th?
No, the 6th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would she rather, Lauren, wait until it's a complete set, or would she want to get started on review of the building?
It depends on whether you're going to ask the committee to sign off on it. We need to sign off on it before the committee sees the final set.
Yes.
So I'll keep you in the loop. If we don't have civil, I think it'll be critical to how the landscape elements play out. If the stormwater management strategy, needs to be reviewed by the group. And so if there's any delay, I'll let you know, but let's, as Matt said, hold the 6th that I share the full set with you, if that works for the group.
Dominic, I would just send Lauren and Andrea this set as you're sending it to Pete. So because they're going to be able to review the building irrespective of what happens to landscape, right? So at least give them that week to take their time to review it and not have them trying to scramble to review the whole set in 24 hours.
Sure.
So I would issue the, whatever drawing, the architectural and structural MEP.
Right.
Yeah. And then just hold off and yeah.
Yep.
All of that. Yep. Everything except civil and landscape, and then issue civil and landscape as soon as we have it. So they've got enough time to review.
You don't need to send it to me anymore. My email address won't work after Friday, so. Just Andrea.
That's so sad. Okay, we'll send it to Andrea.
So you're talking about us signing off on it on Tuesday, the 7th?
I think that the approval of design development isn't going to happen until we've reviewed the DD cost estimate. So on the 7th, I don't think we are looking for a vote from the building committee.
Okay. Okay, because I was hearing Lauren saying that they would need to sign off on it on the 6th. Is that right?
Yeah, she did say that, and as you say it, I think that's not quite right, because as I said, you guys aren't going to sign off on DD until you know that the project is in line with the project budget, right? So
right.
We've got to get the estimate, and then we've got a week built in for estimate review, followed by then a meeting with you guys to say, okay, this is where we are with the project at this point, and hopefully at that point we're on budget, and at that point then you can authorize us to move into the next phase.
Okay, but I still
and
think
if we're not on budget, then we need to take time.
I still think Andrea should see it before this page turn, whatever. That's a new phrase to me. I don't really know what that means.
Yep.
We
make
just
sure that she has everything in advance.
Present the set, Lauren, at a page turn.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
And what are our options if the cost is more than we manage? What do we do at that point?
It's hard to speculate, Penny, because that's a loaded question. It depends, is the answer, really. It depends on how far off the estimate is at that point. Obviously, our hope is that it's not far off, that it's not off at all. And that if it is, it's relatively minor, and it's things like, the reading garden, or, we're carrying underground trenching for electrical service for the building. We're pricing an alternate for overhead lines as a way to reduce costs. So we'd be looking at those kinds of things to help manage any any discrepancies between the estimate and the budget. But until we get the estimate, it's hard to say really what would need to be done.
Matt, you'll include us with the distribution when the documents go to Timothy. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Marianne, are you clear on where we're heading?
Yes, I'm going to post a meeting for November 7th at 7 p.m. Mostly for a page turn of the entire DD set. And then and then we'll have the pricing about 2 weeks after that.
So we kind of hold the 21st as the 21st.
21st.
Okay. And we'll have a couple of days to review it before then, hopefully.
We'd have to.
Yeah,
we have to
because it's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah.
and Matt and Dominic are gonna send Andrea the pricing set as they send it to their cost estimator. And we're gonna spam Lauren with email every hour of the day between now and 5 p.m. on Friday. Just we can send you jokes and funny pictures and memes. Okay.
As many cats as possible.
Okay. You can print those all out and take them with you. And okay. And then on the 21st, we'll all be pleasantly surprised by the cost estimate, and we'll vote to move forward with the next phase.
We are seeing encouraging news on our other projects, just FYI. So
yes. All right.
I don't know if Neil is seeing the same, but we have been.
From your mouth to God's ear, as they say, Lauren. Let's hope so.
Lauren, I'm gonna hold you to that.
You're gonna have to come back if it doesn't happen.
She's only on the hook until Friday, though. So,
Brad, you have your hand up.
Just a heads up, I have to leave at 3:15.
Okay.
Okay. And we have minutes to approve.
Yeah, we have several more agenda items.
Yes.
Okay.
No. Do we have any better sense of when the NOI will be ready for submission? It sounds like there's still a good amount of outstanding information.
There
Well,
is.
so, yeah. Dominic has mentioned a few times that we're still waiting on the report for the borings and the test pits. And Dominic has been harassing me, and I have been harassing Ophia. So I hope that we'll get that today. And they can't finish the NOI until they have that information.
Right.
That's right. So Penny, I think it's still status quo on the schedule of things that needs to happen before we can submit. We need the stormwater, we need the grading, the limit of work.
How many trees you're cutting?
That's right. I mean, we need that limit of work line so we can get that surveyed, staked, and then we'll get Greg out there as quick as possible.
Okay, I think we are cutting the trees, or counting the trees, not Greg.
Got it.
Yeah.
To expedite, you're saying. Yeah.
Well, just because I can count trees.
Yeah, sure. I know he lives locally, so it's definitely not as much of an imposition. But when we're ready to go, Penny, I'm very happy to coordinate with you and Greg and whatever's best, and I'm sure he will be happy to go, either way. So I'll definitely keep an open line.
In terms of tree counting, Penny, I assume it's only trees in the buffer, right?
No,
and is it only trees in the 25-foot buffer?
No, it's the whole
in
buffer.
100.
The whole buffer
The whole,
zone. Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen their chart, but the new regulations for the ComCon have a very complicated formula for replacing trees. So, and shrubs.
Yeah, it'll be an arduous job, Penny.
Well, the counting.
But I guess
right.
Sorry, Matt. What?
I guess where I was going with that is things that are not in the buffer aren't counted. So as an example, the stand of evergreen trees that is kind of right where the northwest corner of the building is.
Those are in the buffer.
Which are not native trees.
Yep, but they're in the buffer.
I thought they were outside of the buffer.
Oh no, they're very close.
Okay.
In the buffer.
It's the 100, Matt.
Yeah, they're in the 100-foot buffer.
Yeah.
So.
I thought it was a 50-foot buffer. If it's a 100-foot buffer, then it's anything being cut down on the site, basically.
Well, not by the septic system.
Yeah, right.
Just about everywhere else.
Yeah, right.
A lot of trees to be.
Yeah.
If you need help with that, Penny, let me know.
Okay, I would love to have some help. Yes.
Okay.
I think I need a caliper as well because we have to measure the diameter also. You're a
Where's AI, Penny, for a job like this?
Oh, really? Indeed. Okay. Well, I will continue to hold my breath until the notice of intent is done with the commission and the cost estimate is back.
Yep. Okay, I know Brad, you need to leave. I'm sorry. Can we move on to the review of the well installation engineering needs? Mary Ann?
So a couple of weeks ago, I got a proposal directly from Fussin O'Neill for the well engineering, which was not which Odinzello says that they expected would be the town's responsibility. But when I look at their proposal, they don't say that it's the town's responsibility. So currently there isn't a contract for well engineering or permitting. And we can't install a well. Because it's a public water supply, a well can't be installed until a well engineer designs the well. And then there's pretty extensive testing involved in installing a public water supply. And so anyway, that proposal was about $70,000 with $21,000 being the engineering and permitting, and about $50,000 being the testing.
So our proposal, just to clarify, did not list it as an exclusion, but it also didn't indicate that that was scope that we were providing. And if you look at the cover letter of the proposal, it says that we will locate the well and we will design the septic system. So, we don't say anywhere in the proposal that we are going to design and permit the well. Unlike, whereas we do say that we are designing and permitting the septic system. So it wasn't captured in our scope because it wasn't captured in Fussin O'Neill's scope, and therefore it's not in the current fee. If it had been, our fee would have been higher by the cost of that work. Testing is always by owner, but there are a lot of things that we see provided by owner. Typically, geotechnical is provided by owner, survey is provided by owner. A lot of times it's this kind of site specific requirements that are provided by the owner, hazardous materials assessments. That's not typically something that we provide as part of basic services. And so it's, as I said, it's not captured in our proposal. And so
Matt, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
And this is an honest question. Can the town open a building that doesn't have potable water in it?
Now, I'm not saying you're not doing a well. I'm just saying that we don't typically provide that service. Yeah, I mean, you also can't build a building without testing. You can't build a building. If there was an existing building on the site, you can't demo that building without doing a hazardous materials assessment. That doesn't mean that that's something that we provide. It's part of the project, but it's not part of our basic scope of services. So that's where the miscommunication is here. And as I said, I mean, if it was part of our scope, then
it would have been included in our fee, and our fee would have been $20,000 higher than it is currently. The 50,000 of that 50,000 roughly is for testing. We never do testing. Testing is always done by owner.
No,
So-
Matt, no disagreement.
So we're talking about the design, the engineering and the permitting, which is about 20,000.
Yes.
And our fee would have been $20,000 higher had it included that service, which it currently doesn't.
But it's not clearly excluded on your scope of services.
It is not listed in the exclusions. That's right.
Right.
But if you, as I said, if you look at the cover letter, it says that we are locating the well. We're not engineering the well. We're not permitting the well.
But the same, Matt, but again, I don't want to debate this in a public meeting. That's not the intention. But I think that, I don't want to speak for the committee, but I think that we're still not convinced that that cost should flow to the owner. Just being honest.
I hear you, and I think we feel the same way that
in the event
we shouldn't have to pay that cost.
In the event of a disagreement, how do we move it forward?
I don't know. This is the first conversation we're having about it.
Well, I would ask for your insight.
Well, as I said, it's the first conversation we're having. I don't have insight. I've told you what our position is. We've read through the contract. There's nothing in the contract that obligates us to design and permitting of the well. It was our expectation and Fuss and O'Neill's that it was not part of our basic scope of services. So
the town was not privy to the agreement between you and Fuss and O'Neill when we negotiated services, correct?
That is correct.
So we have no way of knowing that Fuss and O'Neill excluded it, or we would have flagged it. And when we go back through and read your proposal, there's nothing in there that indicates that you don't own designing the well. You say you cite it, but there's no exclusion language at all about the well in particular. So you can understand the confusion and the frustration and the sticker shock when they're handed a bill for $70,000 and don't know it's coming.
$20,000.
No, the proposal from Fuss and O'Neill.
I understand, but the 70,000 includes testing. There is no question that testing is not a designer service.
I don't disagree, Matt.
So we're talking about a $20,000, I think it's $21,000 cost here.
Yes.
That we've got to resolve.
Yes.
Dale?
Yeah, technically you're correct, but on the committee end, it's a $70,000 budget issue for us. That it's an unanticipated stop in the budget process, really. So, I mean.
But we're not in charge of managing the project budget.
Oh, I know. We're not trying to lay the whole thing on you, but you can understand that, it's a problem for this committee.
I'm wondering if, because we're obviously trying to hand you a $21,000 bill and you're handing us a $21,000 bill, if we could go middle of the road and each pay 10,500 of it and everybody be somewhat all right with that.
Yeah, I mean, from our standpoint, we obviously don't want this to be a huge impediment in the project, and recognize that this is, Dale, as you said, it's sticker shock, whether we're talking about 20 or 70. And so we want to be part of the solution here, and we are willing to work with you guys to figure something out. I don't know, Elaine, I'm not going to say right off the bat here that yes, absolutely we'll do that. I'm also not saying we won't do that, but it's because Fuss and O'Neill is involved here. I feel like I need to go back and talk to them I've got to talk it over with my business partner, and we've got to kind of figure out what makes sense. But we are certainly open to finding a solution that is acceptable to everybody.
Is that a solution that's acceptable to my committee? Mary Ann? Mary Ann's shaking her head yes. Dale?
I think it's a start. I think it's a good place to start.
All right. Stephen?
I support that.
Jeff?
Agreed.
Penny?
Reluctantly agreed.
Okay, let's start there. And move it from there, because I don't want this to be a sticking point either. But we're baking cookies to build this building, and $21,000 is a lot of cookies. And
So Matt, I think if that's agreeable, we'll expect that you will have Fuss and O'Neill execute an agreement with you at whatever the dollar value is. I hope that you'll do your best to encourage them to sharpen their pencil, and then the cost will be split 50-50 between you and the committee, or you and the town.
Yeah, that is in theory what we're talking about doing, but I want to clarify that is the cost of the engineering and permitting.
Yes.
Not splitting the cost of the testing.
Yes, understood. And I was going to say, we're going to approach Matt. I believe that a lot of the expense with the testing is I'll use the term, the hardware associated with executing the test, right? A pump, a generator, kind of the whole 9 yards. My suspicion is if we lump that into the services of the well driller, that we can probably get it at a much reduced cost.
Yeah.
But we don't know that yet, because we don't have the information to go back to the well driller to get his fee proposal to drill the well. So we're kind of stuck in a hole right now.
I also just want to make the point that, and Elaine, you said you guys are baking cookies, and I understand. I know you guys are doing everything you can to make this project a reality. I don't want people to have the impression that somehow we are sitting back and, just kind of raking in a fee. If you remember, our fee for this project was significantly higher than what we are doing this project for now, significantly. And we went back to that fee multiple times, cut it down, and we're doing this at really our bare minimum. And we are not even breaking even on this project. I just want everybody to be aware that that's the case, that we are not making money on this project. It's not like, this is a grab here for us and we're just trying to get everything we can out of it. We're working really hard for you guys, and we want to make sure that you guys understand that.
We do. And I do appreciate that. Lauren,
can I just remind everyone that the state is paying 75% of this? We're talking about $5,000, not $20,000. Okay.
Okay.
Engineering and the well drilling are both eligible expenses.
Okay. Okay.
Does that include testing, Lauren? Is testing eligible?
Yes, testing is eligible. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that perspective. Okay. So let's see, where are we? I guess all we have is minutes to approve.
Let's release these guys.
Let's release these guys. It's been a long meeting.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Be in touch.
Appreciate the work.
Hi, Lauren.
See you soon.
Goodbye, everyone.
I'm going to tell everybody I shouldn't do this, but my email is the same as my work email, but just put gmail.com instead of mass.gov.
Thank you.
All right.
Good to know.
You haven't seen the last of this, Lauren.
Enjoy it.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Lauren.
All right. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of October 10th?
I make a motion.
I second. Dalma
Okay.
seconds. Marianne, you're muted.
Antonellis, I.
Dalmas, aye.
Pool eye.
Jake's eye.
Quackenbush, aye.
And Paleo abstain.
So we have two sets of minutes from the library.
We
Design
also have
subcommittee.
another set of regular minutes.
Oh, okay.
The minutes from the design forum from September 26th.
Yes. Do I hear a motion to approve the September 26th design
I'll-
forum?
I'll make a motion to approve the September 26th design forum.
Dalma seconds.
Okay.
Antonellis, I.
Dalmas, aye.
Pool eye.
Jake's eye.
Quackenbush, aye.
Paleo, aye.
Alrighty, and then the design subcommittee has two sets of minutes that need to be approved. The first is October 2nd, and we had started this at the last design subcommittee meeting, but then Jeff had technical difficulty. So we should probably just start again. Stephen submitted a couple of corrections, which I made. They were very small, grammatical things. So is there a motion to accept those minutes, those corrected
I
minutes?
move that we accept the minutes for the design subcommittee from October 2nd.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, alrighty, so Antonellis, I.
Dalmas, aye.
Quackenbush,
Pool-
aye.
Yeah,
Okay.
pool abstain.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's just the subcommittee that has to
Yeah,
vote on those.
right,
And then
yeah.
the second set is from October 6th. I sent those out recently. And Stephen caught that I spelled Stephen's name wrong in one place. So
Thank
so I made
goodness.
that- I've made that correction. And so is there a motion to accept those minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes from October the 6th.
Second.
Alrighty, Antonellis, I.
Dalmas, aye.
Quackenbush, aye.
Alrighty, those are all set.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Why
make a motion. Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Can
And
I
I
just
will second
wait,
that.
Oh, wait a minute.
before you adjourn, I have to report that when I went back and they did more perk tests, they were good. And I just want everyone to know that because the first one was very, very marginal.
Yes.
So
Thank
that
you.
was a bit of good news on the site.
Excellent. Good.
Good.
Thank you, Penny.
Great.
Good
Great.
news.
Thank you, Penny.
Marianne, motion to adjourn, I seconded.
Antonellis, I.
Dalmas, aye.
Pool eye.
Penny,
Sorry, I'm typing Penny, Jake's eye.
Quackenbush, aye.
Paleo, aye. It
All
was a
right.
long meeting, folks. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
So the
Okay.
next meeting is the 7th
For 7th,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
at 7.
Yeah.
at 7, yep.
Okay.
right.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Okay.